Welcome to Wilder Wolves, Hall of Fame Mode Fandom. My name is Wilder Adams, and ladies and gentlemen, the NBA offseason, the light is officially at the end of the tunnel, and the start of Timberwolves basketball is on the horizon. We are finally here. The nothingness of post Summer League basketball, the no content, the dryness, it's all almost done. And now we can really start looking forward to the Minnesota Timberwolves this season. The NBA regular season is officially less than a month away now, preseason less than 2 weeks away, and NBA Media Day for the Timberwolves, it's only a handful of days away. We are literally just about to start on what is going to be a marathon of an NBA season. And this episode is going to be all about before the marathon starts and the unpredictability, the curveballs really start flying at us. This episode is going to be all about things to be excited for on the outlook for the 2025-26 Timberwolves. This is going to be the start of a 3-part series. In each episode, I'm going to list 5 things I am incredibly excited to track as a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, ranging from the branding, the culture of the squad, the X's and O's of the team, the coaching, all of it. We're going to just talk about 15 things I am so excited to watch as a fan. And before we get started, I would so sincerely appreciate it if you aren't subscribed, that you do subscribe to this channel, because this is going to be a super exciting season. And this account is going to be active. It's going to be engaging, interactive. And my goal is to have this platform be a Timberwolves community that celebrates the best fan base in the NBA. And it's going to be such an exciting year. And we have a lot to talk about. And we have a lot to talk about today, especially. So let's get started. The first part of this series, I really want to break down and cover the aura on this Minnesota Timberwolves team is going to be endless this year. This Timberwolves team is going to get exposure and spotlight unlike we have ever seen before with this franchise. This is different. Not only is this team winning now, but this team has a superstar that has incredible traction, incredible attention that is only going to go up with Anthony Edwards. And the NBA recognizes that. The community recognizes that in a way we've never seen before. And that can be highlighted by the numbers. Of course, when you talk about the Anthony Edwards part, he's near top of the league in social media views from last season. You know, he's pretty high on jersey sales, top 15 at least. I don't know what the exact number is right now, but he's pretty darn high there. But what's really cemented that is, number one, the national TV's games this year, pretty significant. The Minnesota Timberwolves are top 5 in national TV games this season. And the teams that are ahead of Minnesota are like NBA champion, OKC Thunder, big market teams, New York and LA. Those teams are getting the attention, and then Minnesota is the next group after that, which I think is an honor in a lot of ways. There's going to be 28 national TV games for this Timberwolves team. And I think just getting used to like ESPN coverage, and when you are a highly covered team in the NBA, you start getting nitpicked in ways that you never have before. Like, I remember when the team stunk, and I used to, of course, like a lot of us, be super optimistic about the future and feel like the Minnesota Timberwolves were very undercovered and they didn't get the attention they deserved. That's not going to be the case this year. There's going to be a ton of attention, a ton of national TV games. People have their eye on this team because they're really darn good, and they're expected to be good again this year. But also Anthony Edwards, of course. The attention, the league has recognized that he's a future face of the league. And I'm just going to be super excited to see how this just influences not only the team, but the fan base. Because, of course, the Timberwolves, they're a pretty local fan base historically because they haven't been good enough or the attention to really expand to a national front. But Now they're going to be all over TV, and Anthony Edwards is intriguing, and the team is going to be fun. And I think that's going to bring a lot of stories. I think ESPN and those big platforms are really going to break down this team in ways we haven't seen before, which is great. People are watching the Timberwolves, and that's going to give this opportunity for the fan base to really expand on a national horizon. But also as fans, like, we got to stick together because there's going to be some pretty nasty narratives with this Timberwolves team, as there's going to be the ups, there's going to be the downs, there's going to be the questions. And I think we have to get ready for that. There's definitely a thing about being overcovered and maybe too picked apart, and I think we might see that a little more this year, especially if there's a curveball, especially if there's an unknown, especially when just things get crazy. People are going to talk about it, people are going to notice. So I'm excited to see the attention of this team because I think this fan base deserves the spotlight it's about to get. Not even mentioning, I mean, the Christmas game, right? The Denver Nuggets, Minnesota Timberwolves Christmas game, a growing rivalry, even though it can't be a rivalry like Joel Embiid says, because we keep kicking their butt. So is it a rivalry? I mean, you could debate that, but the NBA is positioning it like a rivalry, a divisional rivalry. And that's going to be a big Christmas game as well. Back to back seasons having a Christmas game. So the spotlight's going to be super fun to just track with this team. I'm super excited for that. And the next thing I want to talk about, just building off of the idea of this team having just a limitless amount of aura, let's talk about the jerseys this season, because the jerseys this season are absolutely fire. It's like the Marvel, like the super teams, the 92 Dream Team. This is the best jersey collection in Timberwolves history. If you want to disagree on the normal jerseys right now and not be a fan of them, I'm not going to fight you on that. I personally like the normal jerseys. I like the dark blue, the white jerseys. I think they look pretty cool, but people disagree with me on that. But there's no dispute on these two things. Number one, the Prince jerseys are back and they're freaking awesome. They're freaking awesome. No disrespect to Josh Okogie, but it's going to be really great to have Anthony Edwards be the representation of those Prince jerseys rather than those really bad Minnesota Timberwolves teams. So that's something to be incredibly excited about. And also, I mean, one of the most popular jerseys of all time are coming back to the vintage black classic Swingman jerseys. Those are going to be cool. I mean, those are one of my favorite jerseys of all time. And we are going to get a rotation of these jerseys, which I think is going to be absolutely fantastic. I don't think that we are going to have as many frustrations with the jerseys this year. And I think the Timberwolves are going to get some pretty crazy sales this year because, I mean, those vintage black jerseys are pretty awesome. Anthony Edwards and those, that's going to look incredible. We're going to get the Prince jerseys. I think that combination right there just cements their jerseys being absolutely fantastic and worth following, worth buying. I think my Christmas credit card is not going to like me this year because I'll be buying some for myself probably and a couple for my friends and family. So, might go broke this Christmas buying Prince jerseys, but here we are. I mean, that's Hall of Fame fandom right there, right? So the jerseys are absolutely something to follow. And let's transition because those are the first couple, like the theme of the branding of the team. Let's talk about let's go to the young players. That's another really fun season. That's another really fun aspect of the season, just specifically tracking the young players. Of course, last year, the 2024 NBA draft, it was the most hectic Timberwolves draft since the Ant and Jaden draft because they trade up for Rob Dillingham. They sign or they draft Terrence Shannon Jr. late in the first round when he was a projected lottery pick and slipped due to off-court questions that turned out to be innocent in his case. But you get these two really impressive, fun, fast, dynamic rookies. They don't get to play much year one. There's a lot of mystery between the two. Of course, Terrence Shannon proved more than Rob Dillingham that first year, especially in the playoffs. But Rob Dillingham, let's all remember this. Rob Dillingham has had moments year one. He had that really intriguing January where he's playing against Houston and Minnesota loses that game late, but Rob Dillingham was managing that game like a veteran. He looked great against Boston. I mean, he was the point guard on the comeback, that 17-point comeback in February against the Thunder. He had a great game against Utah where he's incredibly efficient, nailing threes. Of course, after that Utah game where things he said were looking easy and they turned out not to be easy, he still showed up in ways that rookie season. And I think he's shown enough to be excited about his long-term potential. He built off of that in the summer league, started a little slow summer league year two, closed off really strong with an incredible second half against the Phoenix Suns in summer league. I was able to cover that game. It was super fun to just connect with him and chat to him about that. But I think between those two, there's a unique upside that they provide. And I mean, in different ways, right? Like we'll go deeper into the point guard conversation as we did throughout the offseason. But in an ideal world, Rob Dillingham is the answer at point guard as soon as this year as a dynamic secondary scorer, primary playmaker who not only adds the shiftiness and the shot making, but adds pace to the offense. Rob Dillingham, I think there's a ton of room for him, a ton of opportunity for him to really take that role if he earns it. And I think that's going to be so fun to track. I think Terrence Shannon is more of a safer bet this year because he's going to just play. That's the expectation. No Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The team needs that physicality he brings. We are missing that against OKC. And then in the conference finals, when he plays OKC, he's incredible, right? He averaged like 34 points per game per 36. And he had great moments. And the talent's there. The shot making's there. I've compared him to Christian Brown, and I've heard people compare him to Miles Bridges. That ability is there with him. And I think there's a legit world those two particular players do really take a big step and be cemented as rotation players this year. And if they do that, I mean, that's a really important step for the Timberwolves, not only this year, but long term. And I'm just excited to see when they play, how often they play, what the rotation looks like. The starters are anything but cemented right now. So I think there's a lot of reason to be incredibly intrigued about those two. And to go to Twitter, I think we're all on the same page here because before I recorded this episode, I tweeted, what are you most excited for coming up this Timberwolves season? And very common answers, like Wolves in 5 tweeted, TJ real bench minutes. And then I got a TJ flourish from another account. And I mean, Jalen Clark was mentioned. There's going to be some, it's not only Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. Jalen Clark will have an opportunity. He was with Chris Finch with the Lynx in the playoffs. I don't think that has like significance in the rotation, but clearly Jalen Clark has a good reputation on the team, and he was efficient year one. Could defend the heck out of the ball, of course. So he's another name to watch. Yoan Beringe, the 17th pick in this draft. Insane upside, the athleticism, the rim protection instincts, the lob potential. French Tyson Chandler in some ways. Does he get an opportunity this year? I mean, with how he looked more ready in summer league than I expected, I can't count him out. I mean, he's shown the talent, and outside of Rudy Gobert, this team could use a center. I know there's a lot of front court minutes between Julius Randle, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert, but there could be 10 guys in rotation. Randle and Naz could play the 4. Is there a world where Beringer is the guy who emerges in the rotation? Who knows? But Minnesota has a really fun unique position this year, unlike other years, because there is a decent plethora of young talent on this team. But this year, they actually could be used. Nikhil Alexander is gone. Mike Conley is aging. They need more young players. They need a backup center. Like a lot of roles here are for the taking on this rotation, and the young players will have the opportunity to fulfill them if they earn it. The next thing I'm going to really focus on, and I'm sure this entire fan base is going to focus on this season, it's not the prettiest part of this team, unfortunately. This has been on in the DNA of the Minnesota Timberwolves, not only last year, but a handful of years. Can the Minnesota Timberwolves play mature basketball this season? Like legitimately just sound, consistent basketball. And what I mean by that is, can this team close games? And can this team not play down to other teams? I mean, I'm sure you guys feel the same way. I felt like I was about to have a stroke last year on like 10 different occasions because they're blowing a 24-point lead to the Milwaukee Bucks in the fourth quarter. They lose back to back in freaking Portland early in the season last year. The Toronto meltdown game, losing to the Washington Wizards. They had so many unacceptable losses last year. And a couple years ago, in the first Rudy Gobert year, that was a nightmare. They couldn't beat bad teams. There's something in this team about not showing up against teams that they should show up against. And is that just something that's always going to be the case with this iteration of team with I just want to say it like, is this going to be an issue with Anthony Edwards and Chris Finch long term? I don't think so. I hope not. But this year, they're going to answer that question. Can they beat up on the teams that they're supposed to? Because when games get tough, you wish you had those games back, especially when you're in clutch time games against good teams. And speaking of that, they can't do that either historically. They're 20 and 26 in clutch time last season. I believe they led the league in clutch games last year, and they lost 26 of them. They had the 24th best winning percentage in the clutch. They're bad in the clutch. They shoot 29.5% from three in the clutch. So this team really struggled late in games last year. And that combination of not being able to close games and not beating teams that you're supposed to, that's why Minnesota only won 49 games last year, because we saw it. They made the conference finals at their peak. They make the conference finals. They are a top two team in the Western Conference. And that postseason, by the way, making the second straight conference finals, showed a lot of positive signs in that direction. Minnesota shot much better in clutch time in the playoffs. They had 151 offensive rating in the clutch last postseason. 151. And they were a bottom five offense in the regular season last year. So what Minnesota Timberwolves team are we getting? Did they turn the corner last postseason in offensive clutch situations, or were they just playing the Lakers defense? Can they make those threes late? Can Anthony Edwards make great late game decisions? And can they just stay mentally focused when things matter? That's going to be a big question with the squad, because if Minnesota this year can really just smoothen out those late game situations, they could have a top two seed in the Western Conference this year. There's no doubt in my mind. And honestly, I can yell at this team, and sure, I probably rage tweeted 50 times when watching this team just not play to that level. But this is also most likely just the natural process of your franchise player being a 23-year-old in Anthony Edwards at the time. So, age 24, can we see that progress and see that clutch time performance improve, and also just playing good against teams that you're supposed to play good against, I guess. I think the Timberwolves have it in them. And if they can solve those two problems, it's really hard not to envision an incredible season next year. And the last thing I want to tap into on this episode before we close out, how fast can the Minnesota Timberwolves start this season? Because Minnesota is in as good of a position to start strong in the Western Conference as anybody. Think about it. This offseason, there's not like the World Cup or the Olympics where the entire team is playing basketball for 12 months. The team is coming in rested. And I think that's incredibly important for veterans like Rudy Gobert, because, of course, Rudy Gobert, we saw slight regression last year. And a 7-footer playing that much basketball in consecutive years, the Olympics, the World Cup, et cetera, that's just a lot for a 7'2" guy in his 30s. But this season, having everybody just kind of come in, be focused this offseason, we've heard a lot of the things about Anthony Edwards, he especially grinding, the team being in the facility in the offseason, Jaden McDaniels training with Kawhi Leonard. There's a lot of stories about this, and nobody questions the young player's work ethic. Yohan Beringer, that was one of the first things that stood out about him to a lot of people this offseason. And also, I mean, Terrence Shannon, I mean, how many threes has he taken this offseason at this point? Didn't they track like 20,000 threes before Summer League? Like, has that doubled? I mean, people work on this team, and I think there's a really good cultural dynamic that comes along with that. And that cultural dynamic, I think, could really align this year and start strong, because as teams like the Houston Rockets and Denver Nuggets figure it out with, the changes in their team, changes in their rotation, those teams might start out a little slow. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they were the youngest team in the league and they won the championship last summer. Like, are they going to have a hangover to start the season? And then you look at Minnesota, it's like healthy offseason, rested offseason, everybody's paid. Julius Randle gets his money, Naz Reid gets his money, Rudy Gobert has his money, Anthony Edwards, of course, has his money, Jaden McDaniels. We can go on and on and on. Everybody has their money this season, and there wasn't a lot of change to the roster this year. So this team has continuity. This team, I don't think, is going to have too many, personal clashes based on the need for money and when life gets real beyond basketball. In those fronts, particularly, I think Minnesota is in a position to be incredibly aligned in those reasons. And we saw that in the 2023 season, 23-24 season, when Minnesota won 56 games. Minnesota started that year 16-4, and they were the number one seed the majority of that year. And I think that's because they had a full year of figuring out Cat and Rudy. And this team was a better team than that first Cat and Rudy team. And they have that chemistry. And they made the conference finals last year already. So what does that mean to start this season? Like, personally for me, unless there's major injuries, knock on wood, I would be disappointed if this team doesn't start 15-5 or better, because they have all the advantages that all the really good teams in the Western Conference this year don't really seem to have. And that makes me incredibly intrigued for this Timberwolves season. And this is going to do it for part one on the 15 things that I am most excited for this coming season. Like, the content, guys, I am not kidding. Things are really going to ramp up. You're going to see a lot more podcasts, like multiple a week, reels on social media. The activity is going to be awesome. And I am so thrilled and so excited, because this is going to be such a fun community to be a Timberwolves fan. It's going to be interactive. It's going to be inclusive. It's going to just be, hopefully, in the best representation of what is the best fan base in the NBA, an incredibly fast growing fan base, an ascending fan base. And I'm excited to have you guys on this journey. Thank you all so much. If you finish this video and you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm not begging for it, but I would so sincerely appreciate it, because we are going to pour our hearts into this account this season, and it's going to be fun, and there's going to be a lot of fun guests and fun dynamics. I'm just so excited for what is to come with this team this season. and the stories that this team is going to create. So thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom.